Hey everybody, I'm Matt, and this is Capsule Cone, and I'm sitting here with my good friend Curtis Leeser, and we are talking about guitar solos today. And we're going to look at a song that I produced about a year ago for my friend Clayton Crowder. The song's already been released, but what we wanted to do is we wanted to talk about crafting guitar solos, and we wanted to talk about it from two different perspectives, both from what you think when you're producing the song and how you're listening to the solo that the talent, in this case Curtis, the guitar player, is, what he's bringing to the table, and then trying to get something that fits the song and how you can collaborate with ideas together, but then also how, as the guitarist, someone like Curtis can sit here and listen to the song and then try to figure out what it is that the artist is wanting, because that's really the goal. At the end of the day, the artist, the songwriter, in this instance, Clayton, was the client, and we needed to figure out what it is that Clayton wants, both sonically, which is partly my job, but then I also have to share that responsibility a little bit with Curtis, because I don't want to necessarily have to make you play something that you're not feeling, because then that's going to affect your performance.
Right, yeah. And I think this whole video, and kudos to you and Clayton, because the song is fantastic. I have it on my playlist, when I'm driving and stuff.
Thank
you. Great job. Great song. And even, just to preface, the solo for this song is fantastic. So it's nothing to undercut or anything like that. We're just showing instructional videos, kind of how the process is. So me coming in as a player, we have 3 different solos with different tones, different guitars and stuff, and trying to hone in towards what the solo for the actual song turned out to be.
Exactly. And I think, so Clayton played the original solo on this, and I think from the audience perspective, what we didn't want was to show you necessarily something that we're working on that's not necessarily finished, because that might be a little bit more, actually less exciting. That might be less exciting to listen to something that's maybe just a bass and an acoustic guitar. But this has, the finished drums layers on it, all the layers. That we had a session guy from Nashville play the lap steel on it, and it's got all of Clayton's vocals. Everything is done, and so
and that's the important thing too, because usually when you're bringing in a lead guitar player to do solos and stuff, drums, bass, a lot of your layers are already tracked, as opposed to a scratch track with an acoustic and a bass missing drums that.
Right.
That's another reason why we, went with this song and this idea.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you had been here the day that we had actually done this song, Clayton played all the guitars on this, really. My friend Dustin may have played 1 or 2, but if you had been here, you would have already also gotten the vision of the song. You would have heard it coming and taking shape, and really, because you've heard the finished one and the solo that Clayton tracked, you kind of already had a good feel for what for what he was going for.
But also, to bounce off of that, in a lot of studio situations, especially when you get into remote sessions, where I'm at my house, however many miles away, tracking in my own personal studio, you are usually the person that's contacting me and that I have contact with. So I would track something, I would send it, and you would show it to the artist, and you guys would discuss what you liked, didn't like, and then I would be hearing feedback and would have to adjust my playing accordingly.
Right.
Which is the point of this. It's the relationship between the producer and the studio musician, or the musician that you're working with, trying to get the overall idea.
Totally. So let's listen to some solos, right?
Yep.
So this is the first one. This was
the Reverend. For that, we used the tone bender. I had the Korg SDD 3000 and the Fathom reverb, which we're running through the effects loop, and then the tone bender and the Memory Man. We're going directly into the amp.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, we're using the third power Citizen Gain, and so the reverb and delayer and the effects loop, and then the tone bender and the Memory Man we're right in front of the amp. So here's the sound with the Reverend. Boy, the fuzz on that tone bender is really, really nice on that reverb.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So sometimes in these situations, with this solo, is very fuzzy, has a lot of modulation and reverb behind it, very spacey, almost shoegazer kind of
it
thing.
is almost shoegazer.
So sometimes what happens is an artist will, name a band that they want you to try to mimic a solo with.
Right.
And your job is to, try to capture that. And sometimes, you both may have like different songs in mind. Like if there's not a specific reference track or anything like that. So if someone, says like an indie band, like, hey, I really like Arctic Monkeys influence kind of thing. So it's like, okay, they have a wide variety of stuff, but a lot of their guitar tones are very gritty, has a ton of reverb, and I would play something like that. And then, the producer and the artist listen to it and they're like, that was cool, it was too heavy, it didn't fit what we're going for. But there's a run that we like. So if you keep the run, kind of change the tone.
Yeah, exactly.
To help hone it in. Kind of thing.
And it really varies with the producer's style. I tend to be a little more hands-off. I want the guitar player to bring what he brings to the table and to start to do what he wants to do, because it's really his idea, and then I just want to refine that just a little bit and try to also, bridge the communication between the session player and the artist would be what I would be trying to go for in this case. And obviously we don't have Clayton here to know whether or not he liked this or would have liked this. This is a made up situation. But, I think knowing what the actual solo turned out like, if this was the first take, I would probably be like, hey, that sounds really cool with the fuzz, but I think that we could go a little more this direction. That's going to fit the vibe of the song with something that's a little bit cleaner sounding, which would probably be closer to like
the Silver Sky
or the Nash that you
played,
played,
absolutely. So then at that point, you take the feedback and go ahead and regroup and be like, okay. So again, if they like a specific lick, try to come up with another solo. You change guitars out, switch your pedals around or your helix, whatever you're using.
Sure.
And then, you reattack it and, try to come up with the best thing you can. It's strictly professional and you still want to give your best, even if that was my favorite solo, like I'm a creative person, so I know I can sit down and come up with some stuff and still be extremely proud of it, as well as, meeting the artist's needs and wants in this.
Sure. And this is not to take anything away from your playing or your ability, but this is also like kind of the bare bones edition of what it would be like in a real scenario. Once we find the sound, once we find the thing that we liked, we would do multiple passes of it to really perfect it.
Exactly.
And for the purpose of this video, we were setting up pedals, we were switching out guitars, and Curtis did basically a practice run and then the actual take that you're hearing. So let's listen to one of the other ones. Which one do you want to hear next?
So the Silver Sky would be the next example.
Okay, so this is the Silver Sky one. So tell me about the tone that you put together on this one.
Okay, so I had the PRS John Mayer's Signature Edition Silver Sky, phenomenal guitar. And then with it, I used the 1981 drive. Still had the Korg delay and the Fathom hooked up, but kind of, dialed back some of the reverb and the delay.
So not as shoegazy.
Not as shoegazy, but still gave the space.
Not as gritty, because the tone bender was super gritty.
Correct, yeah, not as fuzzy. And then used the Walrus Audio Julia. So you may listen to the solo and think like, oh, well, this is kind of like a very similar tone. It's just scaled back as far as like how the modulation depth is pulled back and the drive is not a fuzz. It's, closer to a distortion or a heavy overdrive. But yeah, again, it's just showing the process of trying to dial everything in and honing it back. Okay, here we go.
That chorus makes it sound really slippery. I like that.
It does, yeah. And again, it's like a scaled back version, but it's still a completely different direction. Almost has like a Ryan Adams feel or Probably shouldn't say that in this video just because of all the hate.
That's okay. You can leave your comment below that you hate it. That'll just boost us up in the algorithm. So, but Ryan Adams would actually probably be an appropriate reference because I know that Clayton really wanted to. Maybe a better way to say it would be he was going for like a modern Tom Petty kind of a vibe where it's like acoustic driven, but then it's also like a little more modern sounding.
Right,
a little bit less classic rock. So
yeah. So, and I'll just say, for me personally, like listening to the solo this feels like me, just because some of the bands I play with, like when I think of a distinct tone, like this comes to mind. And this is something that I would have no problem throwing in any kind of song that I write or whatnot. Like it just sounds so cool. But at the same time, like the producer could hear it and be like, okay, again, like there's a couple licks we like, but it doesn't set the vibe.
Yeah.
Which again, these are examples, and
chorus is coming back.
Exactly, chorus is coming back. Modulation's great, but it's great. But again, like you hear it, and the artist might not like it, and you take it and hear what they have to say, and you're like, okay, so then you got to get. So we're getting close to the vision. As far as sound, like we're definitely closer, but this is still not the end goal.
Anytime that you have a heavy effects-driven guitar sound, you run the risk of somebody either being, totally against it or on the fence and not liking it because of the way that the effects strike them. I almost always, if it sounds less like a straight up the middle guitar sound, I almost always prefer it. But some artists really want that.
Yeah, and some songs, call for it. I mean, think of how Fuzz was created. Like, it was just an overdriven preamp on a board that was clipping, and then all of a sudden, like everyone hated it. They were like, "What is wrong with this bass?" And they left it. Yeah. And then it, hit the market, and everyone's like, "Oh, this is the coolest sound ever." And then,
everybody needs it. Yeah.
Right, and then Fuzz became a thing. So there are, you can take as a musician, you can have the creativity to be distinct and have your own sound in some situations.
Yeah, for sure.
But sometimes it doesn't fit what needs the song. So you just have to find a way to hit that goal, to hit that vision, to hit that sound, even if it means that, and it sounds bad, but it's not like, because I'm a very distinct guitar player. The way I play, like a lot of people would hear the riffs I play and they're like, oh, that's Curtis. But there are certain situations where I have to dial that back, dial those preferences back, where someone wants like a very, standard lick. Or
well,
like
being a session guitarist definitely makes you have to be a little bit of a chameleon from time to time.
Right, yeah.
Even though, what an artist is really paying for when they hire, or a producer is really paying for when they hire a session player, is that artist's taste. The reason that I would pick you over another guitar player if I, had to pick from 2 or 3 would be because, well, I know that Curtis can do this thing that we need on this song, and that's why, versus somebody else. If I needed somebody that could do a lot of really, chicken picking, like 90s country kind of stuff, you might not be the guy for the job, and that's just the way that it is. You pick guitar players based on what they bring to the table. So let's listen to this last one. This is the one that's probably the most close to the original solo, even though it's still not the same. It's got some tremolo on it. Tell us about this tone that you put together.
So this one I used my custom Nash TC63.
Okay.
So Telecaster, it has a Bigsby on it. Double bound ash body with a rosewood neck.
Okay.
And then I used the Greer Lightspeed drive. So
we're going even lighter drive.
Yeah, direction. Even lighter drive. Barely had drive on it, is how it sounded in here. And
all 3 of these sounds were just the channel 1 of the Citizen Gain, which is the clean channel. Of that.
The only thing I didn't even change the any of the knobs on the amp. It was just solely based on the overdrives and the pedals is what I used to control all that.
Okay.
And then had a Boss Tremolo, and then again used the Korg and the Fathom. So it's probably the most stripped down version because everything was really scaled back except for the Tremolo, which gave a a slow vibrato kind of sound. But yeah, let's check it out.
It's a little bit vibier, maybe a little more pulled back. Here we go. That's nice. That fits really, really well.
Yeah, I think it had a really nice vibe. As if you noticed, I took away all of the modulation and literally replaced it with a tremolo and used my Bigsby as my special effect, if you will. But yeah, it's something I would consider tasteful instead of flashy, which, you know, I think fits the tone of this song. You know, tremolo kind of, it cuts your signal, which then makes you want to play longer sustained notes, because if you start playing faster or heavier, a lot of it's going to get cut out, so it loses that feel. Which really is a testament, like, and just a side note, you know, you could do a whole series or, you know, video on it, but how the pedals or instruments you use affects the way that you play or approach something. Which was part of this video, is switching guitars for each one, switching pedals out for each take, because they all lend their certain creative style into your playing and help channel a certain way that you play.
Oh, totally. If we had had you just change guitars for each different pass, they probably wouldn't be so drastically different. The fact that we're changing the pedals and really reshaping the tone for each one really made a big difference. So
yeah. So all of these takes, like, I was really happy with, you know, getting a practice take and then, you know, a full take. So I like the way they turned out. And that's just kind of something you have to be prepared for when you get into a session, is having to do different takes, you know, think off the top of your head and move really quick and efficiently.
yeah.
And again, as you can tell, there's I think one little run in there that's in all 3 solos, which is why I keep pointing out, like, if the artist was like, I really like this run, but didn't like the tone of it, you know, you find a way to throw that lick in there and kind of build your solo off of it, kind of thing. Yeah, so, you know, I think this is really fun for me to do, because it keeps me on my toes and is a great exercise for me. But again, we just wanted to show you guys kind of these different examples and how all of this stuff affects the way you play and how you approach a song. And again, we went super extreme, you know.
Yeah.
Most of us, if we went in and heard this song, would not pull out a tone bender or memory man to do a shoegazer tone. But we kind of wanted to show that whole stepping down and honing in the vision for the song and how important that is as a player, and, you know, doing it in 3 takes. Because sometimes you get less than that.
Well, this was a lot of fun, Curtis. Thanks for doing this with us. And what I want to do for anybody that watches this video is that we want to just kind of keep the conversation going, because this video was a much more conversational style. I'm not going to, like, you know, go through and try to edit out the ums and try to make some highly produced thing, because I don't think this video is that. But what you can do to participate is, if you've got comments, if you've got questions, you know, I'd love to know what other people are doing when they're trying to approach guitar solos in a thing like this to get different sounds. I mean, I think that we could have, if we had wanted to take a few more takes, you know, we could have brought out a couple of other things. One thought that I had while we were doing this was, I was like, man, why aren't we trying to go for something that's a little bit more like, you know, if we wanted to have something that was extremely different from what he originally did, we could have pulled out a compressor pedal and went for something that was just really clean with reverb, and that could have sounded cool. But I'd love to know what you guys are doing when you've got to track a solo, or things that you've tried. And then the other thing that I want to say too is just, like, you know, we have the luxury of having, you know, there's almost 70 pedals sitting over on the shelf that's behind the camera, and so we can sit here and trade things out all day and really shape and tones and things like that. But if you're a guitar player that's at home, and, you know, maybe you've got, you know, an older pod unit or a Helix or, you know, a Kemper or something, or maybe you're just in your DAW trying to play around with sounds, you know, you can still do all of this, create the sound that you're going for, and then let that inspire the guitar players. But we'd love to know what you're doing. So if you've got a comment, leave it below. Curtis will be lurking in the comments, and I'll be there too if anything comes in. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Anyways, I've been Matt.
I'm Curtis.
This is Capsule to Cone. Thanks for watching, guys.